Hey y'all, welcome back to Mirror Expressions. I ask that you please take the time to hit the thumbs up, subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and then share with a friend. All right, tonight we are reviewing American Horror Stories, Season 2, Episode 7, Necro. Before we get started, y'all, take a moment also to drop a mirror emoji down in the chat. If you have looked in the mirror today and you feel A1 with what you see looking back at you, and if not, as always, I encourage you to take whatever avenues that you must to get back to a healthier you. All right, y'all. Let's get it crack-a-lacking. I'm just gonna say, y'all, I was not really feeling I was not feeling this episode. Yeah, it was very weird. Like at one point I was just like, okay, I think I've had enough, but I did come back to it and finish watching the end. But yeah, y'all get what I mean at one point. Just know Necro, it could be short for many words, but it is necrophilia, so that's what it's short for. All right, so we're gonna keep this nice, simple, and short, and then we're gonna keep it moving. Also, I think this is the last episode of the season, right? So there's that. Anyway, like I said, this one was weird. So we get Sammy. Sammy's um in her early 20s. She's a young lady and she's working at a funeral parlor preparing the deceased bodies to be viewed. Like she's taking the suction in the air out, putting their eyes together, doing makeup, doing hair, that type of thing, right? So she's engaged to this guy Jesse, who's an attorney, and so she's at work. Well, let's just say Jesse first. He has a problem with her working at the funeral parlor, right? He doesn't really like that she does that. He can't stand the smell, like the formaldehyde. And she's always like, well, I took 2 showers before I even came home. And he's pretty much like, honey, you still smell like it or whatever. So, but this is like her passion. Like she has a thing for working with the deceased. And we learn later on it's because past trauma. Her mother passed away while she was at home with her when she was just, a baby basically. And so she was with her mom's lifeless body for 3 days before somebody even found her or whatever. So y'all just keep that in mind. So anyway, so she's at work. She's working on the body, getting it ready, prepared for a funeral. And in comes this guy bringing in another body. And she's just like, what are you doing here? This is off limits area. And he's just like, basically, I'm the new grave digger and I'm delivering another body. I didn't know I couldn't come in here, blah, blah, blah. So that's the first introduction between her and Charlie, the grave digger, right? So long story short, Sammy, she's starting to feel disconnected to her fiance, right? And in turn with that, she's starting to build a connection with Charlie, the grave digger, because like her, he is obsessed with death as well. He has a thing for deceased people, respecting the dead, and then he's obsessed. And kind of find out is because of his past trauma too. Excuse me. His whole family was taken away from him in a car accident. They were all in a car and he was like the only one to survive. So his mom, dad, and his sister all were taken away from him at a young age, right? So they start connecting over there. They share similar respects for the dead, and they're both just have this weird obsession with things like facts and all that. Like one of the facts that they kind of made sure to point fingers at was that there is a story about, I think in China, they said that a woman buried herself alive with her deceased husband so that they could achieve immortality, right? So one day she comes into work. Now we back to Sammy, right? She comes in to work. There's a new body, and she goes in like she always just talks to the deceased like they're living. She's just like, "Hey, I'm Sammy. I'm gonna get you prepared for your funeral." So she's going in doing her thing, right? And she pulls back the cover, and she realizes that the body underneath belongs to Charlie, right? And so she's just like, "Oh no, you know." So she starts feeling the type of way because she's has started building this connection with him. And she starts confessing her feelings for him. And y'all, this is when I had to turn it off because I knew it was coming. So she ends up crying, starts to have sex with him, like she climbs up on top of him. One thing led to another, and she had already told her friends earlier that the funny things happen with the deceased. Like sometimes they moan, which is really doesn't mean that they're alive. They're just expelling gas that's in their body. And she just talked about how sometimes the men can come in with an erect penis because of the blood that just travels down to their area of the body. And so apparently that's what she feels is going on. So she hops on top of him and starts riding him, right? And y'all, like I said, this is kind of what I just had to take a pause. I was like, I may or may not come back to this and finish watching it. And I said, okay. A couple hours later, I finally did come back to it and finish it. So at some point, a loud noise kind of startled her. So she jumps up off of him and runs out the room, right? And so when she gains her bearings, she comes and she returns and the body is gone, right? So she immediately goes to his house, to Charlie's house. She's looking around, she's banging on the door. And then all of a sudden, Charlie appears and he starts confessing his love for her. And she's just like, "But you were dead. Like, how are you here right now?" And he's like basically telling her that he took drugs that lowered his respirations to make him seem like he was not breathing. And she's like, "No, but I saw the stitches down the middle of your body." And he was just like, one of his friends did that for him. It wasn't real. He really was not cut open. And so he's just, again, telling her how much he loves her, that they're meant to be together because they're both weird. They both have this obsession with death. And so she's mad at hell, right? Because I think they started to kiss at one point, and then she kind of pulls away from him. And she's just like, "No, you tricked me. That wasn't right, blah, blah, blah." And so she tells him to leave her alone. And so she decides to go ahead and move forward with her fiance. Now, mind you, just a few days earlier, her fiance had thrown a surprise party for her. And in the middle of that, it triggered some feelings that she had about her mom passing away. And it brought her to that place. So she had a whole meltdown. Like she just had a emotional, mental breakdown right there in the middle of her party. And so she had never talked about it with her husband, like the fact that had happened to her mom. So in that moment, she ended up telling her fiance what it was and that she just was not good. She was no good to him. She came with too much baggage, and so she tried to break things off. Okay? So fast forward to now, she decides that, hey, I'm going to try to work things out with my fiance. And I think in that moment when she told him to leave, that, hey, I'm damaged. You don't want to be with me. I think she was kind of feeling like she was going to try to be with Charlie, right? But now this has happened. Charlie had tricked her. She don't like this. So now she's going back to the fiance. She's ready to work it out. So they're moving forward. She ends up quitting her job at the funeral home, right? And so she's working as a makeup artist in like a department store type of thing, or like a Sephora type of thing, right? And so she's even changed her look. Like she's just looking very much more refined and all of this. So she's making all these changes to fit into what her fiance wanted her to be and look like. And so her friends are saying, like, you just don't seem like yourself. You don't seem like your usual self. You don't seem happy. And so it's wedding day, And even then, on her wedding day, her friend was just like, you look like the saddest bride I know, right? And so Jesse and her meet at the altar, and they're saying their vows. And Jesse says he has one last surprise for her, and he's made a video that's just like a montage of different photos that they've taken over the years. So in the midst of this video playing, it gets interrupted or by another video, and it's a video of her in the funeral parlor having sex with the supposedly deceased Charles. Of course, we know he wasn't deceased, but to the camera, to the folks watching it in the whole church, they don't know. So they see her having sex with what they think is a deceased person, right? So, of course, she freaks out. She turns around, and Charlie's standing in the church, and he's just saying that he loves her. They're supposed to be together. So she starts cussing him out, up and down, left, right, back and forth, all that. And she's just like, no, this is not what I want. Leave me alone. Get the hell away from me. And so, of course, her fiance is now not going to be with her. And she's trying to explain to him, but you know. So that just fell all the way apart. So fast forward a couple of months later, and we just see that her whole life has changed. Like, she's just out here struggling in these streets hard. Like, she can't go nowhere without people looking at this video, because apparently it just don't went viral, right? So she can't go anywhere without people like in their phones like, oh, that's her. You know what I'm saying? She can't even get a job. Not even so much as like a maid. She went to go try to be a maid somewhere, and she couldn't even get that job because like they end up finding out who she was, and they were just like, we can't have an offender working with us. And she's like, I'm not an offender. You know, an offender of having sex with a deceased person. And so she's like, I'm not an offender. You got to trust me, blah, blah. So the guy was just like, no. So at this point, she is fire hot again. She's just like basically blaming Charlie for all this that has happened in her life, that she can't just go anywhere and be a normal person, live a normal life. She can't even get a job. So she goes and buys an untraceable gun from somebody, right? And so she goes to find Charlie. He's out in the cemetery digging a grave, right? So she rolls up on him. She points the gun at him. And Charlie's just like, no, this is not what you want. We're meant to be together. He's trying to convince her that he loves her and that she really loves him, that nobody understands the two of them like they understand each other. And then he goes on and tell her, I know about your mom. You know, I know that you were with her 3 whole days before anybody found you. How was it? What was your first time like with Deb? And so she just starts talking to him about what that was like. So she ended up lowering the gun, and it's like she softened up. So they start kissing, right? Making out. And in the midst of that, you hear the gunshot going off. So it's like, okay, who shot who? Where did it come from? Because at this moment, you really not thinking it's her because they're kissing. Well, long story short, she ends up shooting him. She was the one that shot him. She shot him in the abdomen, and then she pushes him into the grave that he was just digging, right? And so she ends up turning on the little machine that throws the dirt back into the grave, fills the grave up with dirt, right? So she pushes him in the grave, turns on the machine, and then she falls in the grave behind him. And so she's like, forever and 1,000 years. And he's like, yes, forever and 1,000 years. They start kissing and having sex while the whole time they're down in this grave and dirt is being thrown on top of them, right? This was just sickening. And so he's sitting there dying from a gunshot wound, and she finna be buried alive. And so it just takes it back to the similar story that was told earlier about this wife that ends up burying herself alive next to her deceased husband so that they can achieve immortality. Yeah, and that was the end of the episode. Like I said, this definitely was not one of my favorite episodes. It was very weird and kind of just, not kind of, it was just sickening to even think about. And, but yeah, that was it. That was the end. Tell me what y'all thought of this episode. I didn't really care for it at all, but I did want to go ahead and give y'all their review. And also I was gonna say, have y'all seen Echoes on Netflix? Like, oh, that was really good. It's like a mini series, a limited time series or whatever. I think it has like maybe 6 or 7 episodes, and I'm thinking about maybe reviewing that. It's about, well, I'll just tell you when I review it or whatever. Anyway, y'all check it out. So when I do these reviews, we can talk about that. And as always, until next time, I'll pray for you. You pray for me, and we will watch God change things. All right, see y'all later. Bye.